the night, you know? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But I didn't get a fever or anything. So.
I will call to order the Finance, Buildings, and Grounds Committee meeting, which was duly noticed on February 17th, 2021, through posting and notification of the press in accordance with Wisconsin Statute 19.84. Safety message. Well, before I do one, does anybody have a share on a safety? Dave.
So hopefully we are all out of this deep freeze weather that we've experienced the last 2-3 weeks. It seems like a year. So now the weather's going to change, obviously. We're going to have freezing temperatures, then we're going to have temperatures up in the 40s, right? And we're going to end up with the good old freeze thaw on our pavement. So basically, I'd like to share with you folks a safety message regarding proper footwear to prevent slips, trips, and falls. Number one, plan for the weather by wearing appropriate footwear, even if you're only going across a parking lot and into a building. Wear a low-heel boot or shoe with good tread, made for outdoor winter weather. When walking on ice and snow-covered parking lots or walkways, take short steps and walk at a slower pace so you can react appropriately to quick changes in traction. Always use handrails when walking up or down stairs. Take your time and plant your feet firmly on each step. Use caution when exiting or entering your vehicle. Use the door handles and vehicle itself as support is needed. And I do have a personal example of this. My wife and I were out antiquing, and it was a rather slippery day. And the proprietor where we're at did not solve. So I drove up to my parking stall. I looked at my wife because I could feel the vehicle kind of shift forward a little bit from no traction with the tires. So I looked at my wife and I said, hey, listen. Be careful when you get out of the truck. I said, because it's very slippery. Okay. I open up my door. Next thing I know, I'm looking at the serial number of my transmission. I'm under my truck like this. And she gets out and she's like, Dave, where'd you go? So anyways, so even if parking lots or walkways have been cleared of snow, beware, there still could be black ice. Water can refreeze and create a very slippery layer of ice that can be treacherous. Try not to carry too much when walking in inclement conditions. Keep your hands and arms free to help maintain your balance if needed. Once you get into your building safely, be sure to remove as much of the snow and water from your boots or shoes as possible. If you have dry shoes to change into, do it as soon as you can sit in a chair out of the way of other pedestrian traffic. So that's my safety tip.
That was perfect because it was pretty much mine. It was, once again, a personal story as I walked her today, which wasn't too bad. But there are times when you have dry pavement and not so dry pavement. And you would think when you're putting your foot on dry pavement, you're good. But you still got this foot hanging out here. And I didn't fall, but I almost a couple of times just as that. So I had to slow down and really shorten your stride to make sure you're more in contact with the ground. So thank you very much, Dave. So with that, is there a motion to adopt the February 18th, 2021 Finance, Buildings, and Grounds Committee agenda?
So moved.
Second.
It's three of us, so that will pass unanimously. And our next item is presentation of the fiscal 2021 year-to-date, January 21 financial summaries, and consider approval to the full board. Mr. McCray.
Thank you very much. And as you normally hear me say, our financials are not that very dynamic on a monthly basis, but that doesn't dismiss the importance of reviewing our financials on a monthly basis. As you've often heard me say, we are not in the manufacturing environment. We are not in a sales-driven environment. Our revenues are fairly fixed, and so are our expenses. So not a lot of variety. I think what's important to understand about our financials is the fluidity and the tendencies within a school district fiscal year. So I say that all the time. We're going to talk a little bit about that in a moment. But in regards to our January finances, okay, a couple things to pay attention to or to note. You'll notice our revenues are up during the month of January, and you'll also recall that that's when we begin to receive our tax receipts as a school district. We also begin to put away that revenue that we receive in January and February towards our debt service in addition to our operating cost. So it's imperative, right, that we pay our debt service first. Our first bill in terms of principal and interest is due March 1st. And statutory, we're obligated not, to really, begin to prepare for that payment. So that's an interesting revenue tidbit for us. On the expense side, probably a thing, and actually I think I'm a day ahead, so I'm going to hold off on that. So a day ahead meaning I believe our HSAs hit February 1st, not at the end of January, so I was off a little bit there. So in February, I'll report you'll see benefits up a little bit simply because we had our second of 2 HSA health savings account payments made to our employee group. So I was thinking January when I was looking at the numbers. So those are a little bit about January. Any questions before I kind of segue just a little bit in terms of the January financials? So in the packet, again, are the official, if you will, reports for the January financials. At your desk side, what I included is a little bit more of a dashboard concept related to communicating our financials. All right. And so I think one of the things, particularly in school finance, I think Allison struggles a little bit with it, if you will, when it comes to interpreting all the data related to student achievement. But the focus of financials for this meeting is how are we providing not only transparency, and even though clarity is synonymous with that word, how are we providing clarity and understanding? Perhaps not to the nth degree, but certainly able to communicate with our public as board members, with your constituents. Again, not to necessarily the nuances of school finance, but with clarity in terms of our monthly financials and our annual financials. So kind of playing around a little bit. I've shared this with Commissioner Ardrey in terms of the concept, not this particular document, of, do we do a dashboard? Do we, the concept, and I think what's new and emerging, in the business field is that data visualization, dashboards, again, to provide clarity in terms of concepts, looking at, mounds and mounds of data off an Excel spreadsheet, even in school district financials, and we'll talk a little bit about the audit report. Again, looking to see how can we get to clarity, how can we provide understanding in a very quick snapshot format supported by data. So that's essentially what you have is kind of our first stab at that. Page 1, cover sheet dashboard, highlighting Fund 10, 27, 50, revenues and expenses, as well as, if you will, kind of what we look like in terms of revenue and expense on a monthly basis. And that's really kind of that second element of the 3-element dashboard. And you'll see as an example in July, a bar graph, the green representing our expenses, and July, the blue representing revenue. And visually, you'll see the disparity between the two. And so when questions arise, such as, well, we had a large fund balance on June 30th, I'll pause and say fund balance is not always cash in a bank, right? It's assets, it's prepaid, which are assets, right? It's cash, it's not all cash. But we begin to see the dwindling of that, all right? And again, illustrating that to where our expenses are outpacing our revenues. All right, so as we tip into July and August, September, we have a state aid payment, but our expenses are still outpacing. Certainly outpacing October and November. And you recall, well, shoot, why do you guys need a line of credit in November? Right? Well, again, our cash position is dwindled by that time, but our expenses continue to outpace until thankfully in December, we receive a very large state aid payment. And then we, again, get into January, so on and so forth. So trying to illustrate that a little more pictorially by using a graph. And then again, the line graph you see below the bar graph is really trying to illustrate our cash position relative to Fund 10, our operating fund. We have cash in our Fund 73 OPEB, other post-employment benefit account. We have cash in our Fund 46, which is our long-term capital maintenance account, but that cash is not liquid for our operating expenses throughout the year. So again, just trying to package, try to illustrate, trying to communicate our finances a little bit more. And again, on the following pages, if you will, are detail, not extensive detail, but essentially a summary report by source and object, source being a revenue, object being an expense. And then the last page, if you will, is essentially our cash balance for month end. And these are reports directly generated from Skyward, which is our financial software that the school district employs. So just kind of wanted to begin to debut that, maybe get some thoughts, some comments in terms of the traditional format, things perhaps you'd like to see that make sense to be seen, and then thoughts on a dashboard.
So our historical reporting, is this like the output of a spreadsheet? The numbers are put in, or I'm trying to understand. So I understand our output from Skyward,
Right.
so which is just print, which is awesome. You don't have to do any manipulating with that.
Right.
So the existing reports, is there a lot of manipulation to come up with those?
Yes.
Okay. So we want to move away from those as quick as we can.
Well, it's, it's not to dismiss. So Jamie Leegert is our comptroller, right? Assistant compiling. And she does a very, very good job in terms of generating the monthly reports from you. Probably goes back to even for those of you who recall Matt Sylvester Knutson, right? And Matt having some input in terms of the design of our monthly financials, right? And so our monthly financials, if you will, somewhat mirror what you will see in an audit report. But again, I think the bigger question, and we're not quite there yet, is how are we using the data to make decisions? And if we're not making decisions, how are we using the data to perhaps educate, right? So that's kind of the take, if you will, that I'm considering pursuing.
Well, and so part of what I was getting at is if we could reallocate that time from the compiling to more analysis dashboard wise, then that to me is more useful because we're actually using the data for something as opposed to presenting the data. Because not many of us as board members have went to the current presentation and had an active discussion really. So, I mean, yes, it has been a board member or two, but even as a committee, we really don't get into them a whole lot. So,
I think one of the things too, if I may expand upon that, is, are there certain things we, similar to a board's agenda, right? So what are some of those things we all, we want to be looking at all the data all the time, but maybe is there an informational point, or we want to take a little bit of a deeper dive, right? And so I think it's incumbent upon us in the business office as we are looking at our financials to say, this is kind of really interesting. Let's take a deeper dive. Let's share that because, what is a piece of information that we're perhaps discovering, and how will that really make us as administrators and you as a board make better and more effective decisions?
So I'm not quite sure I follow. So we're talking about taking this report that we get monthly and converting it into some sort of electronic form that will be available to the public and used as an educational tool.
Yeah, I mean, probably. I'm hanging on in every word, right? So in terms of, everything we do is essentially available to the public. So,
yes, of course.
But I think, right. And, but I think it's some of the reports we can generate specifically from Skyward. This covered dashboard, you cannot. There's manual manipulation.
I see.
And essentially, as I shared a little bit when Commissioner Ardrey and I were speaking on the phone the other day, is this looks really nice, but on the back end for now, it's kind of ugly, right? In terms of there's a lot of manual manipulation.
Oh, okay.
But also, to Commissioner Ardrey's standpoint, is how do we get it to where, whether, again, we're moving to more of a pivot table generating graph, which is on the dashboard. That's a level we've not necessarily achieved quite yet. Still some manual entry. But when you move to page 2, 3, 4, and 5, or R1, R2, E1 for expense, and then C for cash one, those are reports we can generate by a report builder within Skyward.
Okay.
Right? And so that's where it becomes a little bit easier, at least from a business office perspective. The front right now, quite frankly, is a little arduous, all right? But it doesn't mean that front page can't be automated. And again, what we're trying to do is, you say, okay, jeepers, once again, Dan, revenues are not exceeding or expenses are exceeding revenues. And that's how we try to illustrate, then we're providing more of a percentage. And so again, just trying to use those visuals to perhaps tell a story and provide clarity.
Okay. Thank you.
We have almost, well, I'm exaggerating, but probably not that much in terms of data points, and then how many how many variations, and it's amazing. But again, trying to provide clarity.
So for us as a committee, are you ready for feedback for next meeting with this, or do you want to do more work before we get into maybe more so the nuts and bolts of?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and thank you. I think this is just kind of.
So I would say that, and maybe if we could target my viewpoint, if we would target being up and running for I could put something out for. As I was thinking, I didn't want everybody to hear my thoughts here. So rather than, and I just kind of directionally for us as a committee, let's continue to work through this probably the next, I would say even couple months.
Yep.
To be maybe targeting for the finance committee in May. Well, whatever makeup that is and whoever's chairing and all of that stuff. But I think that would be reasonable rather than me, because there's no sense of we have an existing report and there is nothing from a pressure standpoint that we got to turn this around any sooner.
Correct. And we're taking somewhat of a longitudinal perspective with this. I was thinking about like red and blue representing St. Louis colors, perhaps, as part of the report, but.
And I was thinking for someone that is colorblind that we need to just keep that in mind. I am not, but.
Very good.
Okay, thanks, Dad.
For sure. Oh.
The next item. Yep, we do.
I move we submit the January financials to the full board.
A motion second. I also agree with that, so that passes unanimously. Okay. Now the real next item is an exciting one. Review of the referendum approved $22.5 million borrowing. Dan.
Sure, absolutely. So with us to my left is Mike Clark from Baird. And as you may recall, we're not going to illustrate it.
No, President Baker telling me.
That's okay. We follow his lead. So anyway, so Mike Clark is with us from Baird, and he's going to take us through a little bit about kind of what assumptions we had in terms of pre-referendum assumptions for our borrowing from a financing perspective. Then he's going to take us through, and thankfully, the ability to sell notes, to sell bonds, and what we landed on in terms of our final interest rates. And then you may recall the board has been very judicious over the last 2 years in terms of defeasing. This last fall, we defeased, and part of defeasing is how are we managing our debt, again, from a long-term financial planning perspective. And so Mike has, and this is part of your board packet, Mike's presentation, he'll take you through that and let you know where we are today. He'll also talk a little bit about, again, just kind of the sale process, and how fortunate we were for the board to go ahead and adopt the ability for a parameters resolution, and where the market is at even currently. So I'll turn it over to Mike Clark from Baird.
Good evening. To start out, we're really thrilled with how the financing went, and we'll get into some details in a minute. It came about a little quicker than we thought, but that's one of the benefits of utilizing the parameters resolution is you can react to the market conditions, which I'll just go through a little bit. But just to go through a summary of the kind of the process that we went through, and I think this is important, especially since it was the first time the district had used this process, that we had everything in place. We had the rating was kind of the final piece, and once we got the rating in place, which the district was affirmed at the AA2 level, which is a very solid rating, we were able to start monitoring the market, looking for opportunities to lock rates. So there was a couple sales that we were kind of watching at the end of January. One of the main ones was a Chippewa Valley Tech College sale that was on the 28th. And we got those results, and they were very good. And they're a AA1, so they're a notch above higher rating than the district is. But the rates that they received were fantastic. And so we looked at some other comparables and kind of settled on some rates. I contacted the district to kind of talk over what we were seeing in the marketplace. That was on the 29th. We had a proposed schedule of rates on the maturities that we thought we could start at as far as going to the marketplace. And we used Chippewa Valley as kind of the basis. And even though that Chippewa Valley was a notch higher, in the majority of the years of your issue, we actually were going out with better rates than what they were able to achieve. And so on the 29th, we agreed that we were going to go out to the market on February 1st, which is a Monday. And I know you heard me say, we try to avoid Mondays, but just happened to be one of those Mondays where there were not a lot of sales, and the market was a lot of money in the market looking for places to go, because what's happening over the last few weeks is there are more bonds maturing than are coming to the marketplace. So the supply and demand definitely worked in your favor. So we were able to, we went out on that with that scale, and at the beginning of the day, your AIC, we were estimating at 1.1%. But we had such strong demand, we were able to improve some of the maturities and drop your AIC. And I'll get into the rate how the rates work. But the AIC is your all-in cost. That's all your rating fee, bond counsel, all that. That's everything kind of rolling, like when you roll costs into your mortgage, same concept. So that's your all-in cost, your AIC. So the final AIC we were able to achieve was the 1.06%. So very happy with that. And so we got back in touch with the district. District was able to say, yes, let's lock it in. We got the signatures, and we were done. Now, for those of you who had to sign a lot of paperwork and different things, we were done from locking a rate standpoint, but there's more to it than that. And so if you go to the next page, we'll kind of show you how this fits in with your existing debt. And including your energy exemption debt, and how we got to the 1.06% AIC. So your existing debt is on the far left. Existing debt with the energy exemption, we layer in the 22.5 million. We get to the far right-hand side. This is estimates, because again, we don't know exactly what valuations are going to be. But you can see that going forward in that combined mill rate for those debt issues, that the tax rate is projected to drop in pretty significantly over a short period of time. But remember, we also kept in mind the district's operating question, so some of these drops are helped to kind of offset some of those operating question increases. So that's part of the picture that's not here. But from a debt standpoint, you can see that over the next 10 years, your debt one is paid off in full, and the tax rate drops. There's some significant drops going forward, which could create some opportunities to kind of revisit some other things. So actually, from just the debt component of the referendum going forward, the district minimum levy will be less each year and less than it was the year prior to going to referendum. The district will have the ability to do additional defeasances, levy additional dollars to pay debt down sooner, which we always think is a good idea. We have, I think this year at Baird, we have like 85 districts who levied additional dollars to pay down debt early. So that number keeps growing every year. And we'll see what the state budget allows when it's done. I know the governor's version's out, but I have a feeling it's gonna take there may be a few modifications before it's finalized. I'll put it that way. So that might not allow you to continue that, but from a structure standpoint, you may have the opportunity. I want to back up to the AIC. For those of you who signed a lot of paperwork, you may have seen coupons on the debt higher than the 1%. And so the stated interest rate on the bonds are higher than the 1.06%. But if you look under this, the less bid premium column, there's that $931,000. Basically, the buyers of the bonds are giving you money to pay some of your interest cost. So when you net that out, your cost is the 1.06%. The bonds, so if somebody owns the bond, they're going to get say the 2% coupon you may have seen on some of those. But some of that money to pay them is coming from the people who bought the bonds. So your net cost, and the main reason for that in these low interest rate environments is the purchasers of the bonds want a higher stated interest rate on the bonds themselves. It's called coupon protection, because in the secondary market, a premium bond is easier to trade than a discount bond. So if interest rates go up and the bond said it's going to pay 1% and interest rates go up to 3%, so let's say when the bond was issued, current rates were 1%, so it was matching the current. But if interest rates go up to 2 or 3%, that becomes a discount bond, because in order to sell it, because your interest rate on it is so low, you have to take a discount to the face value of the bond. And those are just from because of some of the tax consequences of that bond versus a premium bond, where if you have a 2% on a stated coupon and the existing interest rates are 1%, then it's a premium bond. So that's why they like to, we've been seeing this really for the last 10 years. The premium, it's more attractive for someone to buy it if they can give you a premium. But that's the difference between your stated coupon and your actual net cost. And you can see it down here that the total interest on this bond issue is $1.98 million. But you were given $931,000 to offset that interest payment. So your net interest cost is the one, all-in cost with everything is the 1.06%. Any questions on that? And relative to what we were projecting at the time of referendum, it's approximately about $1 million less than interest cost, which is considerable. We're seeing, it's not maybe as big as numbers you might read in the paper. You might see, Oshkosh number was, but theirs is over a 20-year issue. Yours is over a 10-year issue. And so we were paying, and you can see we're paying a significant amount of your principal in the first 3 years. So your interest cost was lower to begin with. So your relative savings because of the low interest rate is going to be, a bit minimized by that, but still a fantastic news for the district and the taxpayers of the district. So any question on the debt issue, the process we went through, the final rates, the structure? Again, we're thrilled. I will say that deals were being done this week. We're not getting rates at these levels. Rates have crept up a little bit, and I think there's some pushback in the marketplace for people saying, investing for 10 years and getting 1%, is that really a great idea? So I think the whole process worked out very well. Like I said, we didn't necessarily anticipate it moving as quickly as it did, but the opportunity presented itself. So the next phase is obviously it's not new to the district, but it's still relatively new. So we wanted to touch on this. Is a cash defeasance. The district did levy an additional amount as part of the 2021 Debt Service Fund 39 levy, and as we did last year, we're going to in the spring we will apply the dollars towards your existing debt payments. There's a little timetable down below. I'm not going to go through that unless you really have any questions, but we are targeting your May 11th board meeting as far as approval. The district has collected, or I guess maybe if it's fully funded because of the February settlement. I don't know if you got that yet, but this gives us time to kind of look at your issue. And again, the debt structure, I wanted to point out on the previous page with the drop in the debt service, we put in a hypothetical defeasance, so that's already factored into that. So that's helping with those dropping interest rates. But May will allow us to maybe get a little feel for what the state might have in mind, if there's any surprises in terms of how we might want to utilize those dollars. But the following page is what we're anticipating presenting or bringing to the board, subject to change. Just trying to maximize some savings. You can see the debt before the defeasance, and then you can see, so we're targeting the 26 and 27 debt payments to pre-fund. That may vary slightly depending on what happens over the next few months in terms of interest rates. Because within your defeasance, you want interest rates to be higher because these dollars are going into an escrow account and you can earn interest on it. So now that you have your debt locked in, you want interest rates to move higher, so you can maybe earn a little bit more, but you're limited to government securities, so it's not a lot. You're not going to earn much, and it's a relatively short period of time. But reducing those payments, the district, will save about $125,000 in interest costs by doing this. Part of also from a credit rating standpoint, reducing your debt obligation, even though the district's debt is relatively short in duration. Whenever you can do these types of things, it's viewed as a positive as well. So, this will be something coming to the board in May. And again, if the district has opportunity in the future to continue this practice, it just saves additional dollars, helps manage the levy, favorable from a credit rating standpoint. So with that, I'll conclude my comments and take any questions if there are any.
You explained it so well, Mike, there. No questions.
That is great. I knew I was gonna explain something well eventually. Although last time I think it was here, somebody made the similar comment and I decided to stop talking about it. The same thing.
Well, thank you very much, and that's an awesome result.
Yeah, we're thrilled.
Okay. Alrighty.
So if I may, so just trying to illustrate how when we are planning for the future, the importance of not only managing our operational budget, right, but taking a look at our debt obligations as well, and always keeping not only the present in mind, but the future and future structure, right? Because again, we're trying to manage that mill rate, right, and our levy on behalf of the taxpayers. And so managing our debt long-term, anticipating, again, will we need another operational referendum, right? And so when we look at the structure of things, we're taking that into consideration. So just wanted to kind of highlight again.
Sure. Thanks again, Mike. And by the way, for anyone looking at the agenda, I did not forget the audit. I knew we had a guest, so I got to him a little sooner. And we're going to continue with that same thought in mind and go to the student nutrition update. Mr. Deegan.
Thank you very much. I am turned on. Good. Good evening. I'm here today to talk about school nutrition department, our program, and what we've been doing to help support education in the school district of Janesville. This year, actually 48 weeks now, has been a trying time for all of us. Hearing the word pivot is just kind of makes me shake a little bit, as I'm sure it does everyone else in this room. But we do embrace the opportunity to work with the district any way that we can to help support education. And I think our staff has a very good grasp of that now, and they always have. I have some outstanding people that work for us. But let's dive in a little bit. Starting March 19th, we started providing meals remotely for children in the school district of Janesville. Actually, all children that live within the geographic area of the school district of Janesville. And on January 31st, we were just short of our 1 millionth meal. So on February 1st, earlier this month, we did provide our 1 millionth meal to the community to help support during this period. Had a conversation with Dan, and it's wonderful working with Dan McCrae. He's doing an outstanding job. And also our superintendent, Steve Pufall, has been wonderful to work with through this entire process. Want to do some comparisons, and we asked in conversations with Dan, what should we talk about? What should we highlight? We wanted to concentrate on September 1st of this school year and how we've progressed to this point in February. So in 2019-20, which was a normal year until March, we had served 938,000 plus meals, breakfast and lunch, just counting those meal service. Currently this year, we're at 577,000 plus, so we're operating about 61.5% of what we did the prior year. And it happens due to a lot of different factors, pivoting meal service models, making the availability of getting meals to all the children in the district. And I did that as part of a show and tell that I brought and distributed bags. So in this bag, you've got a breakfast and a lunch. Typically, they would be distributed on virtual days from our 3 middle school virtual sites that service Arise, and we also are distributing them on AB days at the high schools. So a student comes to school on Monday, they can get breakfast in school, they can get lunch in school, and then we are at the exits of the schools as they leave the building with meals to offer for the following day where they'll be working remotely at home. We've attempted to do that in the meal. We provide protein source, whole grain rich items, fruits, vegetables, milk, and a treat. And on the handout that I gave you, we differentiate with a B and L. That's what's offered during breakfast and what's offered during lunch. For accounting purposes with the state and USDA and DPI, we bag that so that you can, a student going in can differentiate that there's 2 separate meals there. And we claim them, we have to claim those things on the day that the meals are served. When we first started with the pandemic, we were doing drive-up or walk-up locations, sites in Janesville. And after a few weeks, we pivoted to delivery model. None of our staff were in school buildings working, feeding students. So we had a lot of staff and we wanted to keep them working. And one of the methods we could do to keep them working was delivering meals. So we did an elaborate system and we got into meal delivery. Once we started going back to school, we no longer had the staffing to be able to offer that service, but we still have the walk-up, drive-up locations. At the elementary level, we've been face-to-face providing meals, and we've done that in the classroom. So students have had breakfast in the classroom and had lunch in the classroom, trying to isolate them in groups. Middle school, we've done the same. They've had breakfast and lunch in the cafeteria. The principals have been very good in working with us so that we can stage students going through so that we're social distancing throughout the meal periods, keeping everybody safe. Safety has been a huge part of all of this. High schools as well. We still continue to stage students even though the enrollments are down, numbers are down because of AB schedules. Prioritizing the safety of our staff and students so that we can continue the educational process. Some of the other issues that we've run into through this is procurement. The pandemic and the restaurant industry has taken a severe hit, and we use the same suppliers that supply the restaurant industry. So there's always the concern of being able to get the products that you put on your menu that have certain nutritional requirements, certain allergens, things of that is we've had constantly watch what substitutions we're getting to make sure that all students are safe when they're eating their meals. I worry about local purveyors. I'll mention Darren at Country Quality Dairy. We're 300 some thousand less meals than we were over the same period. And most of those meals are milk, and you'll see that you have 2 cartons of milk in each of these bags as well. So we worry about their sustainability over a long period of time. It has affected our farm to school efforts, being able to procure things safely. A lot of individuals, smaller farmers have taken a huge hit during this. So the ability of getting fresh produce from them has decreased. But I think things are turning in the right direction. I'm very happy to say that I've had my 2 vaccinations. Our staff has all had 2 vaccinations. Just the optimism that goes along with that has helped improve what we're doing. And we're looking forward to a wonderful 2021-22 school year and getting that started up and revved up. We're also planning for summer feeding. We continue feeding year-round in this district because of need that lies within the community. One of the things I'd like to mention, each year when we come before the board, we're asking for what we're charging students, families in this district. This is the 7th year that we have not had to take an increase for any of the families within the district. We've also increased our CEP schools, community eligibility provision schools. We started this district with 5, and now we've changed our grouping 4 different times now, and we have 12 of the schools in the district are community eligibility schools. And that helps give cash back to the community. Allows families to spend the money other than on school lunch for their children, and I think it's a huge benefit for the district. Once again, could not do any of this without our staff. They're working diligently through this. They've helped out when the Thanksgiving to the start of the second semester break. Our staff, in suggestions from our superintendent, offered employment for our staff as paras working in the classrooms. And we've had a number of staff that continue to work as paras helping out the district. So I want to thank them for all of their efforts. They've been wonderful through this, and we appreciate the opportunity to work with you. Any questions? Yes, Jim.
First, I just want to have a comment. What you guys do is fantastic, you and your crew. I know a lot of them, but yeah, it's just excellent what you guys do. Could you maybe tell us, like on last Friday, there wasn't school. So could you maybe tell us, what you did Thursday or whatever, please?
So last Friday was a vaccination day. And we were talking, when we found that out from the district, we said, well, our staff wants to work and students are still going to be hungry. It was a calendar day in our contract with DPI. So we prepared meals in this manner. And on Thursday, all students leaving the buildings were given meals for Friday so that they could we were guaranteeing them a source of food so that they could do work on Friday remotely. And it was a big success. Through this whole thing, when we were delivering, when we see families face to face, just the positive support that we're getting back from the community, I can't speak enough of them mentioning either in conversation, also by phone calls, by thank you cards. The outpouring is greatly appreciated.
So I just want to also, piggyback on what Jim was saying about your program and your staff, and just how they're just a shining star, for this district. I mean, it's just when I talk about this district and when I'm in other towns or whatever, I always mention the fact that we feed kids during the summer, and of course, all of the work you guys did when it went to lockdown and everything last year. And so the program always, to me, is a source of great pride to say that, that the district that I get to work with does this. So thank you very much, and thank you to your staff.
Well, thank you. I've always said this. We're viewed as one of the most outstanding districts in the state and the nation. It's positive work. We keep doing what's best, and we do what's right for the district and for the students. So thank you very much.
Jim, I've been in the district for almost 4 years now. It's hard to believe that time is going that fast. And I on many occasions, particularly in the last 12 months, have walked into your office and asked you to do something unusual. to continue to be able to keep our kids fed. And not once have you even hesitated to say yes. You always find a way to say yes. And so thank you for that. In addition to that, I'd be remiss if I didn't share that when I'm out in the buildings, as I am often, I'd stop in and I talk to your team, just like I do the custodians and the teachers and the secretaries and everybody else. And one of the things I always do as part of that conversation is ask them if there's anything they need, if there's anything I can do to help them. And every single time for nearly 4 years, what I hear over and over again is, nope, we have everything we need. Jim takes care of us. We have everything we need, the equipment, the training, the supplies, everything's there. And so, Jim, it's not an accident that our program is one of the really premier programs in the country. It comes right back to your leadership. And so thank you for choosing to do this work in this place at this moment in time. Your work is both noticed and appreciated.
Thank you.
So having been on the board before Jim was here, and we talk about and we think about, being good. And at least we thought we were good as a district and we did things good and we did many things good. And in the food service area, we thought we were doing really good. But recognizing true leadership under Jim, what it takes to go from good to great. And we've seen that. And it's an appreciation clearly for you and the team, because we know it takes a full team, and knowing them, they're all awesome people. So we know it takes that, but it takes a leader to allow them to be awesome. So as I look at that, and fortunately, you get a new boss, and he didn't mess you up, so that's good. Several new bosses. So it's, so now I have to give the pat all the way around and say, fortunately, as a board, we should be very proud of, the hires that we've made to continue to allow Jim to be a shining star for the district, Jim and his team, for the district, for the state, and the country. And we know several, and I won't get into because this is already Super Jim appreciation. But we know, well, some of us know what he's even meant to advise and lead food service programs nationally. So that's awesome. Now, after seeing all of that, got to do a little work here.
Okay.
And look at the memo a little bit here. And I know most of the acronyms, but the one at the very bottom, I'm like, okay, what is that? What is that? I don't remember exactly what that was.
The National School Lunch Program and the Summer Food Service Program was a district decision. Coming into this school year, the federal government, USDA, gave us waivers to help do our business, to do it properly so we didn't have congregate feeding, creating the spread. And our district chose the Summer Food Service Program, and it was a wonderful decision for us. We're still very stable financially, and things are working smoothly for us. It's working smoothly for the people within the community, and that's the important thing.
So I lied a little bit because I didn't know the acronyms, but I thought it was a story that needed to be shared also. And you didn't do that, so yeah. I thought that was awesome. So, all right. Anything else? Dan?
Jim, just real quick, could you kind of take us through some of the components? I know you did, but talk about the importance of shelf stable, the challenges maybe some of our students have at home, and why the products in the lunch and breakfast, for lack of a better word, bag are there.
So when we first looked at this and constructing anything that we're going to send home to families is I am not sure what's there and what method they have to refrigerate, to store, to cook, prepare for them. One of the things that I wanted to do when we first started serving meals in March, by April, the end of April, beginning of May, I was hearing that kids wanted to have their school lunch again. And, I grew up where, well, I didn't want school lunch. I'd rather have something brought from home. Well, that kind of flip-flopped with us. And so I took a look at, we started a program with a company called Kitchen Fresh Foods out of Green Bay. And we were able to backhaul product to them that they would pack in individual servings that were ovenable or microwavable for people at home. So they could just take it, put it in, and they could get hot food. And it worked out wonderfully. I was very surprised at the quality of the product when we were first testing it and sampling it. So it's been a huge success for us now. I'm not sure which Kitchen Fresh item we have. We use popcorn chicken, we use chicken patties, we use hamburgers, chicken tenders, just different things so the kids have something that they could associate with school. And then the other items, all of the items that are in there have to meet calorie restrictions. We've got calorie ranges for all of our students. Sodium requirements, there's maximums that we have to stay under for that. And saturated fat requirements that we have to stay under those. So we're serving as much fresh food as we can to students. As many items as we can are shelf stable within there. But when they get these bags, like the bags that you've got in front of you, the milk has to go in a refrigerator. Everything else within a 3 or 4 day period is typically fine, shelf stable in a household. The exception will be the burgers or the main lunch entree. Those need to be refrigerated or cooked immediately. So with us distributing it, we usually distribute this right before lunch so that there's safety involved till they have the opportunity to heat it up, eat it, and consume it. And then their breakfast items are all shelf stable, except the milk in a refrigerator. And they could sit within their household for up to 5 days, and they're still safe to eat. So, and that was taken into account in providing these meals because food safety is the first thing that we run into. We also provide meals for students with allergies. We identified who those students are. They come and they pick up a specific meal for themselves. We know what locations they're working from. So it's a communication piece. If any families have any questions, my number is posted there. Megan does an outstanding job, and Liz as well, of communicating with people, and we're here to help.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's go to the update on capital maintenance projects. Mr. Leader.
Thank you. Before I report on the capital project update, I'd like to send out a shout out to our dedicated maintenance team for their snow removal this year. So far this winter, we've tallied over 70 hours of snow removal. 30 of those hours took place over weekends. So, they all realize it's part of their job. However, that does take effect on families, right? Plans, so on and so forth. And they do this job without complaint. So I just wanted to give them a huge job well done so far this winter. And I'd also like to thank the custodial staff as well. During this cold snap, we've asked them to come in on the weekends, do building checks, which is a huge tool, especially for myself, because we do have a lot of square footage, and having those boots on the ground really helps. Really, we came pretty much out of this cold spell unscathed. A couple issues at Wilson Elementary School with a couple frozen coils, and a bad heat exchanger on a rooftop unit at Rock River Charter School, which basically we didn't have any heat on the first floor for a few days. So that is up and running. It's fixed. So back in business. Capital project update. There's no changes. for the remaining of the capital project, so I'll just give you just a brief refresher. Marshall Pool Pack replacement, that's still scheduled for replacement this spring. Craig and Parker cooling towers are scheduled for replacement prior to the cooling season. Craig's North storefront door replacement is scheduled for replacement in the spring as well. And Parker High School, we've got a lot of exterior brickwork to do on obviously the exterior part of the gym, which will take place mid-May to early June. Got to have good weather for that. So. Do you want me to move into safe pathways?
Well, I just
I'm
have
sorry.
a clarifying question. So, just for everyone, right? So when you say you have 70 hours, right? That's 70 hours of event time times the number of individuals responding during that event. So
Yes.
if you have 10 individuals in terms of snow removal time, right? We've maybe invested 700 hours in terms of ice and snow removal procedures.
You are absolutely right. It takes the entire maintenance department to clear snow from this district. So that's 14 folks, maintenance personnel, times 70, and I don't have that up.
Does the 14 include you?
No, but I am here with the crew. So 15. All right, now if we can talk a little bit about safe pathways and a little bit of an update for you folks. So obviously with the enormity of each of our buildings being fitted with safe pathways, we have to schedule the work in 3 phases. So I'd like to go over those time frames with you folks. First phase work will begin May of this year and finish in August of this year. Phase 2 work will begin September of this year and finish in May of 2022. Phase 3 work will begin May of 2022 and finish in August of 2022. So next week, EUA and I will be engaging the first phase building principals with design concepts to collect input regarding space, functionality, occupancy, and design directly from the principals. At next Tuesday's Board of Education meeting, our partners with the Safe Pathway Renovations, J.P. Cullen, and our architectural firm, EUA, will be presenting to the full board, communicating sites associated with each phase, as well as detailed information for each site. So you folks will be able to ask a lot of questions on Tuesday regarding the safe pathways. Any questions?
And maybe to clarify, as we say detailed is in timing, not so much because we don't have a final designs and all that. So
That is correct.
Okay.
And, we're really looking forward to the principal input as well to really solidify, some of our standards that we're looking for.
Sure.
Because really the end goal for us would be to have, for example, you have a student at elementary school, right? We got our safe pathway in there. That student travels to the middle school. We got that same standard and so forth on to high school. So it's the same standard safe pathway throughout all of our district buildings. So those are the things we're really trying to get detail on and focus on.
I just want to say I'm really excited about this project and about making, the designs and things that are going to be coming that will make more sense. I was thinking, wasn't it about a year ago that we were at
Yes.
at Adams, and you know what I mean, and looking at the work that needs to be done there, and just and thinking about the entry and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm really excited about the work that you guys are going to be doing to remedy those situations.
Yeah, we've got good things coming. I can guarantee you that.
I just have, please make sure and share with your maintenance and custodial staff how lucky the board knows we are for having them here and what a fine job they do, all the time. So
I will do that. Thank you.
thank you.
And one item to note that as we think about, this is a big deal with the referendum, but also, and I think it, as a board, and, we heard Dave sharing this is on top of his other duties. So it isn't the case it's business as normal for him. So I just want to acknowledge that as a reminder, and I will keep saying it whether you like it or not, because it is appreciation for the extra effort. Because in many times, what entities will do is really have a separate individual construction manager to fulfill the duties that Dave will be taking care of. So I think it's extremely important to note that and acknowledge Dave for that. So thank you.
Thank you.
If there are no other further questions, then the last two items is Mr. McCray, and you can tell us which one you want to do first, either the audit review or the budget development update.
Well, let's get into the very exciting audit review. I know everyone's been waiting with bated breath. I'm sure everyone, including myself, is disappointed that we didn't share this earlier. But let's go ahead and begin. So Wendy Unger was our lead auditor from Baker Tilly. This is year 2 of a 3-year engagement with Baker Tilly. Wendy was hoping to be here in January, but in the age of COVID, I'll just leave it at that. We were hoping to have Wendy at a board meeting. There was a miscommunication. And essentially in chatting with President Huth, Commissioner Ardrey, Superintendent Pufall, and certainly myself, we felt, you know what, Wendy, write a memo, write a little bit of a report, and let's share this at finance. And I think most likely, maybe moving forward, simply because, maybe not tonight, but, finance is a little bit more of an opportune time to dig a little bit deeper rather than at a business meeting of the board. Certainly, and I spoke about this earlier in terms of the age of transparency, we want to be transparent, but really we want to provide a little more clarity. And so sharing the audit report is really part of that process. Included is kind of a PowerPoint with Wendy's notes. I'm just going to take you through some highlights of that. But before I begin, at your desk sides, and what every board member will receive are essentially 2 audit reports. There's a third audit report. It's referenced as a single audit report, and that's really an evaluation of federal funding within a school district. We qualify every year for a single audit report because our revenues at the federal level exceed the threshold not to receive a single audit report. But really the audit report kind of falls, if you will, under the umbrella of the true district financial report. Wendy will reference this particular document, the report and insights from the 2020 audit, as well as the financial report. And again, we post the financial report online for all to see, both this current year as well as prior years. When we think of the audit, it's not just the auditor, it's a team sport, including Jamie, our comptroller, Tammy, who's behind me, is our grant manager, payroll, benefits, and any entity within the district, such as food, such as special ed, and such as curriculum, in terms of receiving federal funding as part of the audit process. We start ramping up for the audit and business services come February. June is very busy with activity as we look to fiscal year end. Usually late June, early July, the auditors come. They didn't this last year. It was virtual, but typically auditors will come to the district. There's a second field work in August, and the audit is due to the Department of Public Instruction by December 1. So it's a fiscal year, of which, if you will, nearly 5 months or so is dedicated to the audit process, right? So not every day, 24/7, but it is a rather lengthy process. A couple highlights from Wendy, and essentially I'm going to quote her. The objective of the audit is for the firm to render an opinion on the financial statements of the district. The audit by Baker Tilly was done and included that the audited statements is an unmodified opinion, also known as a clean opinion. All right, so it's a clean audit. And that's very good for us, right? It's very good. It's very good for me. So, a couple other items on page 2. She references page 11 in terms of a material weakness. Okay, I don't know a school district of the 421 school districts in the state of Wisconsin that this material weakness is not noted. And essentially, it is the fact that we do not prepare our own financial statements. We do not have a CPA on site. And even when we did have a CPA on site, we still received this particular notice of a material weakness. But again, I defer back to the prior comment where this is a clean audit, but according to generally accepted accounting principles, all right, it will be a material weakness for the district. And Wendy makes note of that in the last sentence of that first paragraph. This is not unusual for organizations the size of this district or for really public K-12 education. I'm not going to go through all this because I know we get a little lengthy. But if you look to Wendy's slides in page 6 in particular, on the 4th paragraph, essentially you'll notice that she's highlighting the fact that the district contributed $440,000 to its fund balance. And this is above and beyond its contributions to its Fund 73 OPEB obligation, as well as its Fund 46 long-term maintenance fund. So that's good, $440,000. Over time, we've probably eroded our fund balance, making a contribution. And again, it's large, but it's relatively small considering the entity our size is good. Because she also essentially references our fund balance policy. And so again, with her particular calculation, we are within the realm or within the requirements, if you will, of the district's own policy, which is 17 to 23%. And I believe Wendy captures us at about 18% with her calculation. So that is good. The audit is essentially filled with tons of information to which bond buyers will look to. We annually upload our fiscal audit to illustrate the strength and the financial integrity of our district to the Electronic Municipal Market Association. That's, if you will, a clearinghouse for bond buyers. They not only want to continue to ensure that their existing investment is strong fiscally, but it also illustrates the financial position of the district for perhaps future investors as well. Lot of data. There's data related to OPEB. There's data related to our WRS obligation. All right. And sometimes, perhaps an oversimplification, I say, are we red? Are we black? We are in the black. We made a contribution to our fund balance. Okay. We made contribution to our obligations, and we do not have a qualified audit. We have an unqualified audit, which again is considered a clean audit. Any questions?
You guys should really think about the language they use to describe, I mean, unqualified, I hear that and I go, what does, that is red flag for me, but apparently that's good. Okay. Maybe uncompromised. Recommend that to them, maybe. Uncompromised. That's all I have to say about that.
I just want to give Dan, Tammy, Jamie again. I know he said it, but I know we just covered in 5 minutes, what is not only a mountain of work, but more importantly, a clear sign that the policies and procedures, the checks and balances that are in place in the district are functioning as they should. It should give you as board members, and particularly as fiduciaries of the district, confidence that the daily operations of the district are above board and able to be relied on to be consistent with your policies. And so really big shout out to Dan and the rest of the team for this really clean report. Thank you.
So I think about, one of the reasons that we said we are perfectly fine doing the audit review without the auditor here and doing it in committee is because where we have progressed to. As I go back, and I no longer remember how many years, we had some deficiencies that we needed to talk through a little bit, at least have acknowledged, because they were some fairly significant deficiencies that ultimately we felt, because they came to bear a bit. So with enough updates in policy, procedures, and going over them time and time again, as I view, you go to the management letter and you look for internal controls and see where are the issues. At least that's what I do, because maybe I'm more geeky here, but anyway. And historically, there have been issues under internal controls. But as you go and look, the wording is still going to say that they're issues, because they're still issues, because we can't help with an organization the size that we are not to have some behind the scenes issues. But nothing that was critical, and anything that was more so critical, our last committee meeting, as we reviewed the Neola policies, we addressed some of those issues. So, similar to Superintendent Pufall, kudos to Dan and his team with the work that goes behind it, and we continue to move from good. We may not necessarily be great, and in this area we may never get to great, but being good is pretty darn great. So thank you for your effort, and we as a board appreciate keeping maybe ourselves out of trouble and Dan out of orange. So okay, if there are no other questions, then on with our next item, the budget development update.
Sure, just real quick as we get on in the hour here. So this last week, or this current week, I should say, the governor proposed his budget. There's a lot of information within that budget. And as Mike Clark alluded to, I think we're going to kind of let it settle a little bit and see what some of the counter proposals yield as part of that budget process. So we're not going to take a really deep dive into scenario planning. Again, just to refresh the committee and certainly anyone who's watching, we've taken a very conservative approach to our budget planning in terms of anticipated revenues, in terms of expenses. It is an interesting year, as it is in all 421 school districts. I think as we work through the process, and certainly it's my responsibility and that of my team, and Tammy is behind me as well, as we work with, if you will, directors and managers, it's not only a time to kind of build the process or build the budget, but it's a great opportune time to be curious. And curious in terms of, why have we always done it this way? And I'll give you an example, right, in terms of curiosity. It's how can we leverage minimal resources in terms of technology? And instead of purchasing, we are leasing. And we continue to lease more and more in order to leverage our purchasing power, right? And so, and that's just an example. Staffing. And certainly staffing comes out of Mr. Gardner's realm of responsibility in terms of looking at board policy and TPR. But really, and this is not necessarily news to everyone, right? But yeah, it's something that Superintendent Pufall speaks of as, it's not the desk, right, that essentially teaches a child math or reading, right? It's the teacher, and then the curriculum, hopefully in support of that teacher for the student. And so the discussions when I have with Allison, all right, in terms of what her needs are, and we as directors in terms of curriculum, you're going to see some great exciting stuff in terms of math, at upcoming board meetings. And when we look to make an investment in our science, our language arts curriculum, with a finite amount of resources, we really have to be smart in terms of how we're leveraging our existing resources, all right, in order to fund the initiatives that are ever so important to our students and to our classroom teachers. Right, so we're going to be curious, right? Particularly, I'd say in my department, in my role, in terms of, we've always done it this way. Can we do it a little bit differently? All right, but we're asking those questions, as I just said, in support of what can we do for our students and in the classroom. that's a little bit about the budget update. And again, you'll see things. What you will see, just real quick, and I'll end with this one, is you're going to get kind of the, these are the deducts, right? Because we have to achieve a balanced budget. But with that, we also have some adds. So you'll see some deductions because, again, we have to make investments, new investments, in terms of what's going on in the classroom. So just kind of keep that in mind at that 30,000 foot level as we proceed throughout the budget development process. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pretty thorough explanation of what we are going to see. So we look forward to seeing that. We have reached almost the end of our agenda other than scheduling our next committee meeting. Tuesday, March 16th.
Are we not dealing with this transportation thing? Oh. We have transportation.
I crossed out the wrong thing. Thank you, Kathy. Yeah, we really do need to do that. Student transportation contract. We'll blame it on Dan.
There we go. Turn the microphone on. So, all right, look for the little light. It's pretty simple, Dan. So you may recall, as we moved through this last spring, we worked closely with Van Gelder and really looking for, if you will, an end date for our rolling transportation agreement. All right, so they're a valued partner for us. All right, but it's also a great opportunity for us to perhaps strengthen that relationship. And sometimes strengthening that relationship is really going out to an RFP, a request for proposal process. All right. And again, they do good work, but I think what has been said is there perhaps a better way to go from good to great? And is that with our current partner? Perhaps, it's our preferred. It's similar to when we do other partner selections, right? So we need to provide notice, and I think administratively we'll be doing so in conjunction with the agreement prior to the end of the month. And then we'll be embarking upon an RFP process relatively quickly. A decision to retain or not is critical in terms of having that sooner than later. Right. So working in other districts and changing in August is not good for anyone. So whether that's transportation or any other type of contracted service prior to the start of the year. And again, it provides stability as well to the chosen partner.
And I guess I will chime in here just to say there's nothing unusual with doing these types of things. I guess I would say we as a board probably should think about, some of those entities that we should review more routinely. So as we look at the legal services, that is a policy to review those periodically. And I don't believe, have anything in here for transportation. We even have a review period for an auditors. So we look at the importance of transporting our students of the district. We really need to consider a policy to do that. Obviously not for next month, but once we get through this RFP process, I think that would be something that we would have an ongoing way of doing it once we've negotiated. Well, contractually, it shouldn't be involved in that, but just make sure that we have a continual review to see, what is in the marketplace and to make sure that the suppliers that we have continue to want to be suppliers for us. So, because it is a two-way street. Okay. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Kathy, for the reminder that it was on the agenda. I crossed it out and moved on. So, future committee meeting. Does the third Tuesday in March 16th, work? Okay, we'll plan on,
At 5?
if that's what works for you.
Yep, 5 works.
Okay, we'll plan on 5 o'clock, Tuesday, March 16th. And we are adjourned.